Hello everyone, welcome to the Latte on Cloud Cost, the podcast that guides you through the complex world of cloud cost optimization. I'm your host Praneet Chandra, and every 2 weeks we deep dive into strategies, tools and best practices that help FinOps professionals, leaders and DevOps teams to navigate the financial aspects of cloud. In today's episode, we have Cristian, who is the cost optimization specialist, founder at Linear Cloud, and helps companies reduce costs. Welcome, Cristian.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Can you please tell me about your role? Can you please tell our audience what you do at Linear Cloud and how did you start it?
So my name is Cristian. I'm based in Berlin, and my focus is on cost optimization for many years now. I started working with AWS for more than 12 years. Most of that was in the cost optimization area. I started by building a tool called AutoSpotting. And that tool, I released it as open source back in 2016. It was pretty popular at the time for a few years. Then at some point, I joined AWS. I was working for a while as specialist solution architect for Spot and Graviton, helping the biggest customers in the EMEA region get started and optimize their infrastructure. And for the last couple of years, I left AWS and now focusing on helping companies reduce their cloud costs. Nowadays, mostly as a service, but also using a bunch of tools that I'm building along the way.
That's great. I think many of us are already a big fan of your work with AutoSpotting and other things. And that takes me to a question. At Linear Cloud, how do you approach cloud cost optimization, right? Because every company I talk to, every practitioner I talk to, they all have a very different approach. But I'm being a big fan of all your content that I've seen on LinkedIn over years, right? How do you approach at Linear Cloud cloud cost optimization?
Yeah, so I have a technical background, so I try to focus on the technical side of things. There is this FinOps concept that is a kind of a bigger picture of optimization, and out of that, there's a lot of it is cultural side of things, which gets people to care about the costs and so on. But at the end of the day, optimization is the step in the process where the work gets done. Like you need to be able to take the actions that are discovered either manually or through automation. So my focus is on driving those optimizations at the technical level and implementing them at scale in the customer's accounts through automation, sometimes also manually, depending on the situation. But it's pretty deeply technical. It can be a lot of things that most people who aren't doing optimization as a full-time thing may not know in such detail, because everybody kind of knows the detail, the big things like right sizing and reducing things you don't need, but there are a lot of things that are a bit more subtle that can get you significant returns from your time that can, let's say, move the needle even further than just doing the simple things.
Great, and that's a good answer, right? And I think that's a big challenge, right? Where people think as theory it's great, but what is actually that technical deep dive implementation that's very critical. What are some common misconceptions that you have heard about cloud cost optimization? I'm pretty sure you've worked with loads of customers. What are some common misconceptions people talk about?
Yeah, I mean, this optimization is much like other things in life where people intuitively know what it means and what it's supposed to be done, but it gets a bit tricky to put it in practice. People think they know, they try to do some of the things, but there is no, let's say, they don't do it consistently, or they cannot cover everything there is in there at the level that's required, and then a lot of the things keep remaining unoptimized, and basically people pay for that through their bills, just paying more than they were supposed to be paying. Other things could be the fact that there's always this different priority that people are focusing on. at any single time. And this is like not a, like often it's not a big enough thing to worth spending time, especially for engineering organizations that maybe are building products that, like, you have to then compensate the outcomes you may get from optimizing compared to what you could get by focusing on building the product that you're supposed to build. So yeah, there's always like this decision whether to do it or get something else done. And a lot of the times it's also a matter of analysis paralysis. People wait for getting all the information they need, and then basically they don't do anything that would even move the needle a bit in the right direction, and they just wait until they figure out everything, that they tag all the resources and so on. Whereas you could just do some things that could reduce maybe the footprint even without having so much let's say information about who owns that particular resource. So you could drive things at the resource level without having the full information.
I think that does a lot more sense to me, right? This is a very common problem. I talk to engineering teams and they talk about this trade-off that constantly happens versus building product versus reducing costs, and they're not able to action them because it has piled up so much. And I think we have to change this whole notion, and we have to get onto this continuous cloud cost optimization. It's not a trade-off anymore. I think it's more of like we have to do it, right? And it should become as part of it. Like, point well taken, my friend. And I would like to understand one more thing, right? You started a product in AutoSpotting, right? So what role does AutoSpotting plays in cost efficiency? Like, I know you might have selected, was it the market size? What is the need of the customers? Or is it like, oh, the general perception how you should do spotting is not very clear, so let me go and build a product. What came to you and how did you do it?
Yeah, it was nowhere like that. So basically it all started out of a pain as a AWS user back in like almost 10 years now ago. When we started to use AWS, it was pretty expensive for our capacity. And then we learned that there are these things called spot instances in the cloud that allow you to get a capacity at a much lower cost. So we just provisioned some of those in our capacity, and soon after, I mean, in a few months, it was working pretty well, but in a few months, we lost all the capacity. I came up with an idea. I don't know if it was myself or I just joined a meetup and people were talking about what if we would find like a way to replace the existing capacity with Spot. And what I did was just I went home and started to build this as a tool. At the time, I didn't really care about monetization, so I just went on and it was an exercise for me to learn the Go programming language, which I had for a lot of time wanted to learn and just needed a project where I could apply that language. Also, I took a lot of decisions when it comes to how I build it based on my curiosity. So I wanted to build it with serverless technologies. It has been from day one written in Lambda, in Go, where Go was not even supported by Lambda. So I had tricks to get it to run and lots of creative workarounds for things not supported by the AWS platform back in those days that we now take for granted. And it kind of took off very quickly because at the time, Spot was pretty painful to use. And the way it works is it just keeps the configuration unchanged, and you deploy it in your account, and then it goes to your groups and replaces the capacity with Spot without configuration changes. All it does is like looking at the current configuration and spinning up a Spot clone of your existing instance, and then doing this over and over until all your instances are replaced. So the group keeps configured as on demand, even in the infrastructure code. And the only thing it needs is a tag that tells it to be converted to Spot. And this was really like, it's the killer feature of the tool is this configuration-less approach. And you can deploy it in your account and configure it against all the groups you have. And they all could get converted to Spot without touching their configuration in any other way. So you get all the Spot goodies, like best practices, like diversification, failover to on-demand instances when Spot capacity is not available, which can still happen. And then over time, evolving a lot of ways towards making it more reliable, that you always get some capacity. Even if Spot capacity is not there, you get on-demand. And then we also do diversification for on-demand when the capacity, even for on-demand, can be short. And a lot of other improvements. But essentially, it remained just a Lambda function running in your account and doing all these things. That allows you to get some. Nowadays, the percentages are in the 60% range, so it's pretty much similar to a 3-year savings plan, but without the long-term commitment. And it also covers increased capacity over time. So whereas the savings plan is a flat hourly coverage. So that's kind of the way it works and how it helps.
I think I was in a place where we had a lot of troubles with the Spot capacity, and I think having your solution at that point of time would have been magical, right? But again, the Spot capacity versus availability versus what availability we get today is very different. I think AWS evolved many folds right over a period of time. So that makes it very interesting. And that takes me to the next question, right? What are the key metrics, right, that you track when you're doing cloud cost optimization? I know dollar value is a most simplistic one, right? And that's what business matters. But as a team, as an individual, I'm working at a company and my job is to do cloud cost optimization. What should be my indicators or matrices in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it always starts with the dollar figures. So when I look at a new customer, I look at their current bill and see where they are spending the most money and focusing my efforts in that area. I mean, it makes no sense to skip to something else. But also, like, over time, I got to see things that maybe give us better return of investment than other things. It could be, for example, that if you're running something on EC2, you would need maybe more effort to, let's say, convert it to Graviton or to Spot or whatever, as opposed to, let's say, looking at an RDS database and doing maybe some right sizing exercise. It's also like a lot about the metrics of each resource in particular, because every resource is different and it has different, let's say, utilization metrics. For example, for a database or instance, you may have CPU and memory as the metrics that you look at. For like, you can also have bandwidth for other things, for network related things like, I don't know, maybe load balancers. And there are lots of these things that depend on each particular instance to help drive the actions that end up being implemented. One of the things that I was working on recently was in the database space, where one of my latest customers had a lot of database usage, and there was a lot of things that were related to not just CPU and memory, but also I/O for the databases. You can have, maybe you know how Aurora works, but in Aurora you have the standard Aurora will charge you per I/O per I/O operations, and then there are metrics for I/O that if you don't pay attention, you could get pretty much to pay more than you should, just because you have to pay for I/O. And then now there is this I/O optimized option in Aurora, where you can have, like, you have the ability not to pay for I/O, but pay a bit more for storage, and then the I/O becomes like free of charge. So what I did recently was actually writing another tool, not just, it works in very similar ways without configuration changes, but it then goes and converts your databases to the proper IO optimized setting based on the IO storage and price metrics of the database. There are all sorts of other things that I look at, but it depends a lot on what the customers are doing and which services they use.
No, I think that approach is good, right? Let's first go and track the big services, look at their spending, try to control them, but not forget the obvious ones, right? They're always sneaking in the corners and helping you not reduce your cloud bill, right? Great. And that takes us to the last question for the day, right? What are the tips that you would like to give to people and companies that are starting cloud optimization journey, right? Like somebody like me who's starting fresh in cloud cost optimization, figuring out where to go, what to do, what will be your top 3 tips for me?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is just try to do something. Instead of just staying in this analysis paralysis mode, like I mentioned earlier. And as you do, gets to do it as a habit. Making it into a process that you look at consistently in your organization. For sure there will be things that you'll miss, but if you make it a habit, you will keep iterating and improving. And yeah. Now another thing could be that if you're not focusing on optimization, maybe you don't know all the tips and tricks, because each resource has its myriad of configurations that you can choose from, especially some of the bigger things, like I mentioned, RDS, where you have 10 different engines, and each engine has different settings, and then each engine has different instance types available. And so it can get very, very scary if you want to look at the details and take into account all that. So one of the things that I would recommend is to tap into maybe resources that you may have about getting those automated maybe in a way, or even just people like myself who can help you figure out what's possible, and maybe help you drive those optimizations. So just don't do everything on your own. If probably you may have also other things to do, and then sometimes it's just not going to get done because of different priorities.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Cristian. And first of all, thank you for coming on the show. Much appreciated. And that wraps up another episode on the Latte on Cloud Cost. I hope you have gained some valuable insights that you can apply to your own cloud cost optimization efforts. Until then, keep optimizing and may your cloud costs always trend downward. This is Praneet Chandra and signing off from the Latte on Cloud Cost. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Praneet.